On WhatsApp, no one can see or hear your personal messages. Whether it's a voice call, message, or sending a password. To WhatsApp, it's all just this. So whether you're sharing the streaming password in the family chat or trading those late-night voice messages that could basically become a podcast, your personal messages stay between you, your friends, and your family. No one else. Not even us. WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Knowing you could be saving money for the things you really want, like that dream house or ride, is a great feeling. That's why the State Farm Personal Price Plan can help you save when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Introducing the new Volvo XC90 with 7-seat versatility, Google built-in, and advanced safety features for all your precious cargo. The new Volvo XC90, designed for life. Visit volvocars.com/US to learn more.
It's really cool. Bonjour, hello, and welcome to the Rosbifs Rugby Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things French rugby, top 14, Pro de National, Champions and Challenge Cups, French national team, of course, most importantly, the brilliant towns, cities, bars, restaurants, stadium, food, everything. The fans, of course, make the French rugby experience so fantastic. It is bright, very bright actually, and early on a Tuesday morning, and I'm joined by Rob, who's also up, he's got to go and drop off a hire car. Yeah. What wheels were you flying around in?
Vauxhall Corsa. It was really good, actually. I've really enjoyed driving the Corsa. It's the best hire car I've had in a long time, I think.
And this podcast is brought to you by Vauxhall in association with the Hertz Rent-A-Car for all of your French hire car needs. Or
my hire car in France was absolutely rubbish. It was, I can't remember what it was, but it was terrible. I hated it. I think it was a Nissan, some sort of SUV type thing. Dreadful.
Ironic.
Try next time, request a Vauxhall. You said it's bright, Richard. I've not had loads of sleep over the last 3-4 nights, as perhaps my voice is starting to show. You are shining like the angel in, I don't know, in a movie, in like Grease, you know, when it's all a little bit like hazy. And there's like some kind of glaring shine. You're kind of, every part of you is actually glowing with kind of as though I've been sparked out and woken up.
Yeah.
By my saving grace, Richard Croney. Archangel Richard.
The Archangel. It is purely the height of the sun outside, as opposed to any sort of, vitality in myself. I feel actually a bit knackered, but otherwise you're good. I noticed what you're wearing. I'd completely forgotten about that bit of van kit that you picked up in Brittany. Very nice.
Yeah, it's all right. It's quite good for this sort of time of morning. A little bit cold, but don't want anything too thick.
Sort of mid layer, I believe they'd call it on a kind of catalogue online. Did you see? We'll get into it pretty quickly. Did you see there was a cheeky little Breton flag knocking around behind the posts at Forsyth Bar?
Hey, they're everywhere.
Yeah,
they're absolutely everywhere.
One of the kicks that Garrett was taking, you could just see it, just nestled away in the bottom corner if you watch it back.
Breton man, Le Garrick.
Yeah, well, of course. Let's pile in then. The domestic season is over. We salivated over the top 14 final last weekend, and this week brought us what was, frankly, a much changed but exciting, certainly from the French rugby nerds' point of view. 15 taking on New Zealand down in Dunedin. First of it's a 3-match series, isn't it? It's a proper shootout. And France. Well, I was about to say France came out the victors. They didn't come out the victors, but they certainly came out in Ashes parlance from a couple of years ago. Certainly came out the moral victors. Did you get to catch most of this?
Yeah, I've watched it twice. Albeit both times on my phone. But I think on the weakened France thing, I would go so far as to say not a single player of that starting lineup is in a first choice France team. Ficou is the obvious one that people are like, but what about Ficou? Well, Moefana was like player of the tournament in Six Nations, and who is the first choice 13? No one really knows. So it probably is Freaky, to be fair. But he was playing 12, so.
What were your initial thoughts?
Well, I think you and I were both fairly strong in our opinion that the chat around it being a weak France side was nonsense. It is a weakened, but it is not a weak France side. Those players are fantastically talented players. It was never going to be 60 points or whatever. We'll come on to next week. I'm not ruling that out next week, but I think for the first test, it was never going to be a huge margin of victory. And I personally am glad that the players that we hyped, that we really like, not like, oh, well done us, just like the players that we really like. There are, the players that we were excited to see step up, did step up. And I think that was kind of my overriding thing. I'm glad there are a few more Atisog Bays welcomed into the Teo Atisog Bay fan club.
Unofficial.
The unofficial. I reckon he follows us on Instagram. I reckon one day we'll make it official.
The official, unofficial. Yeah, and I guess in terms of stat, you mentioned Atisog Bay. He was, France didn't have loads of ball, but he was probably their brightest spark, wasn't he, when they did. The main man, again, he's had just the most incredible season, is Michael Guillard. Yeah. I think we saw in that France 15 game against England, we only played a little bit at 8, but fundamentally it nailed down one of the three kind of second row jerseys in whatever order that Gaultier had been rotating them in, starting on the bench. But to put in a performance like that as a pretty callow international number 8 was remarkable. It was a real like old fashioned all action display. Yeah, it was absolutely everywhere. Yeah. It feels to me almost getting to a point. Yeah, admittedly, there's some very high quality players who'd have something to say about it, but sort of player that you just would look to find ways to get in the side regardless. He's played 8, plays lock. I'd imagine, therefore, he could probably play 6, push comes to shove. He was absolutely outstanding. And particularly from a defensive standpoint, in a game where the All Blacks had the lion's share of the ball, Alexandre Fischer, who I think, as you rightly identified, was kind of a few years back almost seen as like if not next great hope, then maybe one of the next big leaders at an iconic club like Claremont, and perhaps hadn't quite got there. Albeit he still was and is relatively young. He was fantastic, just whacking everything. I thought France as a whole, their tight 5, I don't think had the most influential game. But the back row in the tight exchanges, defensively in particular, was pretty. I'm going to use it, heroic. I would say.
So I'm looking at some stats here, and you never know how accurate these are. But I'm on the Gainline app. Which is actually pretty good at. Fisher, 19 tackles. Fabian Holland from New Zealand, 17 tackles. Gaetan Barlow. I think he would be the one of the tight 5 that definitely had the best game.
Best game.
I would single him out as the best of the certainly starting tight 5. But yeah, Fisher, I feel like I've slept on him a little bit. Like I'd always looked out for him, and then he kind of disappeared because he had injuries and kind of never quite found that form. I was like, whatever happened to him? Like, is this a guy that I always used to like him? Like, I remember when we went to Stade Marcel Michelin all those years ago, he would have been in that team, and I feel like he was brilliant in that game. And he's now going off to Bayonne. So what a signing that is. But just he came into it the more and more the game went on, which I think is a real good quality to have. Like, I really like to see that in a player. Tisa on 12 tackles, so yeah, pretty good. I think he obviously had a little bit more time off the field than the other two. And I think the tackling was physical, and it was like stopping them dead, which I think is pretty impressive. And so one thing you're pretty big on, and you flagged as a concern, just defensively. Sorry if you wanted to go more on the forwards, but you're quite big on kind of defending in the 13 channel, and it's definitely something you always pay attention to. I feel like you planted a seed in my head of like Gaetan. We don't know if he's going to be good or bad in defensively. What did you make of the defending generally and like France's defense? Are you impressed? Are you concerned?
Little bit of both. I think
that's where I'm at.
I think to carry out the point on Gaetan, I don't doubt how quality he is and will be, because he's still, he's still learning, particularly at international level. The point I was kind of WhatsApping with you was that it is so difficult, and it's increasingly like the kind of fulcrum, isn't it, of the defensive line. We've seen teams when it goes wrong, it's tricky, and particularly in untested combinations. I think ultimately, and I don't think this is in any way just on Emilien Gaitan, I think some of their backline midfield defence, I mean, frankly, they got torn apart a lot.
There were a couple of times where they looked.
It was
people are facing in all sorts of directions, aren't they? Like,
I mean, you look at New Zealand for particularly the Villiers try. I mean, they're kind of backpedaling, but it's like two standard little shifts down the line.
Yeah.
And there's a hole the size of like a cavern to run into. So they're not, they're not unique in that. But I think I looked, and obviously stats can be a little bit deceiving at times, but New Zealand had 13 line breaks, wow, which is I think more than the Lions had when they beat like Queensland Reds 15. And I think some of that is maybe just a little bit of disorganisation, new combinations. I think a bit of it, actually, some of New Zealand's, up until the point they got into the French 22 and were either repelled or lost all composure, some of their kind of midfield running and attacking was pretty exceptional. And what was their Roygaard at 9 was absolutely immense, I thought. So, yeah, I don't know if I'm worried about the defence, but to the point you made at the top there, like their 3 tries ruled out. The last half an hour was about as one-sided as I can remember in big swathes, and they'll just
the second half, the first half.
Yeah, they'll have to be better.
Got to get better.
But I don't know that's just on Guy Thon.
I know, and I wonder if actually it is part of. They mentioned like the third defender flying up at some point, and I don't know enough about defensive. I don't know enough about rugby, let alone defensive shape, to kind of comment on how they've gone about it. But I wonder if it is partly just a type of defence that Sean Edwards is employing that is a bit hair and scare and get up in their faces, who cares, and just cause a bit of chaos. And I wonder if it was partly that. They did miss a lot of tackles. They made 218, I think, but it was also like 28 missed, which is never, and they always used to say this about like Saracens and Owen Farrell or whatever, like the missed tackles can be a bit of a misnomer. It's kind of the end results, like the line breaks and the tries conceded and stuff like that. That's the big thing. But yeah, I think you were right to kind of flag it as a concern. I think it might improve. I wonder if they've got about 5 different outside centres available, so I wonder if they will change it up. But
yeah, I've got to say as well, on a couple of years ago or last year when England were trying to employ this like blitz defence, it was all anybody spoke about on on commentary on TV.
They were getting torn to shreds.
Yeah, it was a total disaster. But you could very clearly see what they're trying to do, and almost probably gave them a bit of leeway, I guess. I think from a spectator's point of view, actually, unless it's something as aggressive as that blitz defence was, it can be very difficult as I'd say, I'm not a coach, never have been, never will be, or played anything proper, so it can be quite hard to really know like what that defensive system is, and whether it's just those guys are new, so they haven't quite clicked, or there's a few individual errors, or if there is some sort of new system they're looking at or maybe trialing on this tour. But yeah, certainly their kind of their scramble defense and on the line stuff was pretty serious.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that you flagged, and I think is still a concern, which might have played into that, is the lack of jackal threat. And I think that kind of came to pass. Like Villiers is a very good jackler, but when you're looking across the side and you're like, he's probably the second best person at the breakdown in the 15, arguably the best ahead of Fisher. But that was kind of what happened. He won the early penalty, but I wonder if because they didn't have guys in the tight 5 going at the breakdown quite like that, that possibly kind of meant that they were kind of backpedaling a lot more than they needed to. Like if they had a Booger if he comes on, or someone like a Danny Priso or even like a Miafu who's like pretty good. Like there are players in the tight 5 that they could have that are really good over the ball. Like Julian Marchand is one of the best in the world, isn't he? Like
not just France more broadly, but it's pretty unusual, I think, in any, and it looked this way to me from the outset, any kind of first rate or tier, whatever you want to use, whatever phrase you want to use, for a pack to have so few obvious jackal threats, given how like just an enormous point and talking point it is for sides and certainly the top sides. It's really stood out, and I think you're right. It just meant that those, whilst they were really excellent at being able to kind of hold momentum in their 22 on the gain line just through force and hitting and real kind of doggedness. I can remember, like, maybe one time, I remember Villiers gets in there, doesn't he? I think early in the second half as well, and poaches one on the try line. But other than that, it was, you couldn't really see where that was coming from.
So I saw a thing on X, which I quite liked, of like star ratings as a very kind of like, rather than doing like player ratings, just like, who are the top line? So like the 5-star players, I would say Guillard, Fisher, Atisogbe. Atisogbe, yes, his pace, well, he burns Billy Proctor, doesn't he? He gets a bit of space. And then I thought Guyton was going to go all the way as well. But it just shows how, said this before on
ridiculous
this podcast, how quick Boden Barrett is just amazing, isn't it?
He did it twice. He did it again as well, so later in the game. Ridiculous player.
But because Guyton's not slow.
No.
Those were kind of I thought Atisogbe defensively was that it was the bit like the way he covers the space, his kicking game. France did win the aerial battle. I think, they weren't 100% squeaky clean, but Atisogbe, Villiers, Spring were the better aerial threats and better at disrupting and getting the ball back for France. The kind of 4-star players, as it were, I think, as kind of the next rung down, I'd say I had Barlow, I thought was really good. We know he's a nuts and bolts player. Great work rate. Like, line out worked really well. And then I'd go for guys off the bench. Van Tonder and Woki, I thought were really good. Van Tonder obviously nearly has the dream debut where he like nearly streaks in from 20 from the 22. But I thought, the physicality, when we saw him at Cast, he was just banging people. They needed that physicality from Van Tonder, and they missed it as soon as he got injured. Perpignan. And like some of the physicality, the hits, I thought was huge and exactly what you want off the bench. And same from Woki. I think he brought a physicality and a bit of dynamism. Like, we looked at that. You said that the pack lacked a bit of dynamism, but I think they had a lot off the bench. Yeah. And it came to bear. I know Talfa Vanua knocks it on at the end, but he kind of, to bring his physicality as well, his ball carrying, I think he's someone in the past, I can't remember, it might have been Sean Edwards, said that he's the best impact sub in world rugby. I guess RG Snyman's probably got a bit to say about that, but it's a similar role, isn't it? Like, just a massive bloke. He's going to come on, carry hard and offload out of nowhere. So I think they did bring but I would call out Van Tonder and Woki as the kind of best guys off the bench. Conversely, I'd say the kind of the 1-star almost off the bench, I'd say was, as in 1-star out of 5, was Baptiste Junot, who cocked up a couple of kicks, which I think
huffed a few out on the field, didn't they?
Which, he didn't have loads of impact. We didn't see as much of his spark, but also just the ones he did knob out on the full were pretty basic ones, to be honest.
It's frustrating. Yeah, at a time when they were under relentless pressure as well. Here we go. Yeah, not his finest few minutes. No builds on that. I think I'd agree wholeheartedly. I just think
anyone else you want to call out, or any other thing you want to call out?
No, not really. More that it just sets up I think it kind of sets up the series in perhaps a slightly more intriguing way. It felt before going in, so much noise around like the France side, either they're going to get hammered or it's disrespectful. And actually, one of the people who went hardest on them bringing a weakened side was Justin Marshall. But even he flagged that he didn't think it meant it was going to be an absolute cruising. It was very much like it was more the premise and what it means for fans, as opposed to it means France going to be crap, which I think
is that ultimately was our view, wasn't it? It's like, we know this team is very good, but it'd be really cool to see the full noise and for the hype of the series to have Thomas Ramos and guys like that.
I think almost, slightly ironically though, this result feels like it almost adds a bit more intrigue, because beforehand I was thinking this is like it's a win-win for France because no one's expecting anything. It's a bit of a lose-lose for the All Blacks because it'd be like, well, asterisk, it's French's or the French B team, whatever you want to call it. I think now you're in a position where actually the storyline is, can France back it up and prove that there are guys here that can be pushing the first team, short and long term. And for New Zealand, it felt like they left some points out there, to put it bluntly, and the carrot for trying to put daylight between the two sides, I think, is actually really significant. So I think it's in a slightly odd way, it's actually set up the series perhaps slightly better than I thought at the start of the game.
I thought 2 of the tries were pretty harsh.
They were the ruled out tries were very much on the marginal spectrum.
I think it was someone that at one point said, I think it was Jeff Wilson, was like, this is not Super Rugby. It's everything's got to be, there's plenty of eyes on it, or like, the technical stuff has got to be really scrutinised. And I was like, I mean, it's just refereeing, isn't it? Like, you either let that go or you don't.
Yeah,
I think the obstruction one is lenient. And then I think having seen it again, I think the knock-on one is also quite, like, live. That only gets called back because it's on super slow-mo and someone's chucked it up on screen and it's very marginal. The one where he supposedly lose it over the line.
Oh yeah, it just looks
anything other than
like
slow-mo. It's a try, yeah. That said, I still think the Villiers, I think to get a yellow for that, I think is harsh. Because
where it was on the pitch.
Yeah, halfway line, and his arm is moving backwards. I know the ball goes forward and it's going, and his arm is moving down, but he's trying to drag it backwards. He's not just volleyballing it forward. I still, you said last week that
the
those get over penalised.
Perhaps, yeah. The obstruction one was, when they were showing it, I'll be honest with you, it was like, it's going to be when the ref turns around and says, no, we need the replay from like a phase earlier or a phase later. Like, it's just, I know what's his name is in front, but he barely touches him. And the two of them have basically stopped running and just sort of, almost give each other a little hug. Van Tonder is totally given up because he's never, ever going. It was just, I thought it was quite funny, given they'd been disallowed just before as well. You're like, oh my God, this is... At that point,
I love how, like, as a former pro rugby player, Nick Berry's like using slightly technical language. Like, he's like, yeah, well, he would push out and then, they'd fold round, or like...
Prevents him pushing out. It's like, mate, he is pushing nowhere. My only last comment on this was, we spoke about in the under-20s how useful it was having Oliver Cowie to provide the post-match analysis and interviews in a very kind of RP British way. Well, Tyler de Guy, long may he have a long, successful French career. One, because very erudite after the game, but more importantly, just... so I don't know why, but having a guy with such a thick Canadian accent sounded like after a college football game. It was absolutely incredible on the sort of Sky, the New Zealand Sky coverage. So good.
The player we do need is Guyton. Like, his English is Croydon's finest. He's fluent in English, and I think his English accent is pretty spot on, I think. But I didn't see that interview.
It's brilliant.
What do you... Just very, very quickly, I think it'll be like 30-point victory next week.
So do I.
What changes are you expecting, and what changes would you make? Because I think I know what I would want to do.
I don't know if I'd bring in one of... I don't think either second row was particularly impressive. I think I'd probably be looking at...
I've seen anything from de Guy. I think the line out ran well, and therefore Oradu can get... Like, he did very well at line out time. I saw him around the park a bit more. I would like to see... they're both pretty anonymous, and I think de Guy's been pretty anonymous in both games, to be honest.
One of Woki or Taufifenua. I mean, I think Taufifenua is going to start, so I'd probably bring Woki into the second row.
No, I would bring Woki at 8, and I'd put Guillard at second row.
Okay.
I think he's a slightly bigger... He's a tight headlock, isn't he? So I'd put him. And then you've got another ball carrier as well, which is what they need, and a bit more dynamism. It doesn't hurt the line out at all, bringing in Cameron Woki. I think that's pretty much it. I kind of thought about maybe bringing in Taufifenua as well. But yeah, no, I'd be happy with that. I don't think I would change Guyton. I think defensively, I don't think... Are they able to play Deporter? Is he available next week?
I don't know.
Or is it only the third test that they're available? Because... Well, I guess the man in possession is Barassi, and I don't think he is any less harem-scarum defensively. I think he's more harem scarab. I think the best defender of the three, Barassi, Gaiton, and Deporter, I think is Deporter. But I wonder if they kind of want to develop the Fiku Gaiton partnership.
Yeah,
but I think
I
they
can see that.
dicked.
I don't know what it is for when those guys come in as well, because I guess who else was in there?
Washington, Bastian Verne. Bastian Verne's there to carry the bags, isn't he? Really?
There's no Gazzotti, is there? He was injured. Because that's the sort of player, if available, I think I would like to see.
Certainly on the bench. Because if you move Guillard up and had Walkie starting, you could bring him off the bench as a ball carrier, couldn't you?
Yeah. Okay. Well, looking forward to it. It should be a spicy one, regardless. I'm sure France, I feel like they'll know that they'll need to be a bit more rounded and better, because I think New Zealand were rusty but also impressive in part. So
yeah,
should be an intriguing affair. Should we leave that one there?
Yeah. Very quickly, you mentioned it there. The under-20s. I watched the France versus Wales game in the under-20s, and I've completely forgotten the score, but France won.
Right, isn't it? Wales had quite a commanding half-time lead.
21, yeah, they were 21-7 up at half-time, and they lost 35-21. I'd say high level, France were they just wasted so much ball. They kept dropping the ball, they kept kicking it away, and like Wales basically ran out of puff. They had so much power off the bench in their pack, and that hurt Wales, but also the Wales line out just completely blew up. Like I think they lost like 7 throws on their own line out. Talking of interviews, Sinelli Danavuku, I was right, speaks English, but it's with like a hybrid Fijian French accent. So it's like sometimes Fijian, sometimes French, but his English was pretty good. And he had a pretty good game. He still, for me, think he's just so raw because he still makes a lot of errors, but he did score one really nice try. Other players that impressed me were, just off the bench, generally the pack. Akrab was pretty good again. Some of the Wales players were really good, to be honest. Diego Jord looks really good, and he also didn't miss a kick yet again. Bartholomé Sanson, I really liked. The loose headlock from Leon, really good line-out operator. Looks like a proper athlete. He's a kind of, I don't know, like a Jagu Flamand type, I think, Oradu, like that sort of player. And the front rows off the bench, Jabert and Joke and Alafinetti are units, absolute units. Calvin Gorge, who I think is starting the next game, a lot of hype around him from Toulouse fans. He looks pretty good. So yeah, some people played well. John Etchegaray, good feet.
Again.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, we'll leave the international stuff there and back in just a moment. All right. As promised last week, when we went through the Pro Day team of the season, we've been plotting, thinking, scheming, albeit very separately. So I'm intrigued to see how this comes out. It's top 14 team of the year time, Rob. I feel like you're very much the playmaker on these things. How are we going to do it?
Well, last year we had the nominations and we already had the team of the season from the official account. Having seen the nominations so far, I think we can roundly ignore those, as we did last year. And I'm happy to go through it 1 to 15, to be honest, because although I think we will agree on quite a lot, or we will have the same people, and I also think you might be able to guess quite a lot of my players, which I'm intrigued to see. I don't know if there is anyone that is a complete, like we did last week, that there is a complete, this guy has to be in. I guess the nearest I have is left wing and open side flanker. Of the two,
I would agree. I'd say left wing being probably the closest.
You reckon Bielbiere is more in line than Jack Willis?
I mean, they're both up there, but they're the two for me. I'd say were furthest clear of the rest of their respective packs.
Yeah, I think those two are the ones that are probably battling it out for player of the season. I think.
Tell me just before
they'll find a way to give it to Antoine Dupont, but
before we go through though, tell me the flip side of that, which positions? Because for me, I think 8 and 13. 12. Interesting. Okay,
there's so many options at 12.
Okay, I'm intrigued to hear that because I struggled a little bit.
10,
8 and 13 for me were the
13. Oh, I don't have it at 13. You could say tight head as well.
Okay.
Oh yeah, 13 is quite tough. I've also tried to go, I'd say my limit is if you're under 14 games, ideally you want to be more than 14 starts. So you've started more than half at least, well, in theory, that's more than half the league season. But obviously some teams have played, I think Joris Sagons has played 28 games. So, which is the maximum.
Going.
But yeah, I think anyone under 14 games is games, and certainly anyone under 14 starts has an asterisk as well. So they've got to have done something pretty exceptional.
I might need to think all of mine will be there.
I'd like to think I've got most of the names covered in my checks in terms of what I've looked up so far, but we can double check. Loosehead prop. Who do you think I've picked?
Berrier.
No.
Okay.
Who have you picked?
Maybe a bit parochial. I've picked Mako.
So Mako, interesting. This is why we're disregarding the top 14
Mako doesn't
ones.
make the.
But Thomas McCorrow, who has started 7 games, albeit he has 9 tries, which is quite impressive.
Quite amazing.
But he has made the cut. But the guy that's made 18 starts in the top 14 at Loosehead for Van, Mako hasn't made the cut. I've gone Danny Priso.
Yeah.
But I'm more than happy to go Mako because I think he was brilliant.
My only reason for not my only reason, but I think not picking Priso is because he was so brilliant, particularly in the first half of the year. It's the fact that just when it came back round to the business end, they had Jean-Baptiste Gros.
Yeah.
And that's because they have an embarrassment of riches with 2 outstanding loose heads.
Well, Danny Brennan on the bench as well.
I thought Mako at points was it was like the old Mako.
Yeah.
In a team that obviously struggled.
Plus scrummaging. Mako plus scrummaging.
Plus scrummaging. I'm happy with either.
Oh, let's go Mako. I think you make a valid point on Priso, which means Priso is the man that misses out 2 years in a row. He was on the cusp last year. I think we can do a bench this year, and I'll slot him in on the bench.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Hooker. This is hard. I would say more because there's a lack of an obvious candidate for me. But I have gone for a guy that played a lot in a very good pack and generally played pretty well, albeit his line out did get a bit wobbly. But in the top 14, who are you if your line out doesn't go a bit wobbly at sometimes? I've gone for Facundo Bosch from Bayonne. Okay.
Yeah, don't mind that. I struggled here a little bit as well, but I actually went back in the end, and I don't know where he'd be on that net number of starts. I actually went for Julien Marchand.
11 starts, 14 games.
Ooh. Okay, I'm happy to discount him based on that loan. I think his form at the end of the season for Toulouse was outstanding.
He will undoubtedly. I would like, if there is a way of betting on the official top 14 team of the season, I'm almost certain that he will be the hooker that is chosen. Partly because there's a disproportionate amount of French internationals in those selections. But the other people I considered were Bobigny. Again, Toulon were very good. That front row was impressive all season. Barlow played a load of games. Again, set piece was very good. Very, very tidy. And Foleti Kaituru, who scored, he was a medical joker, but he scored I was quite impressed with him whenever he played. For a guy that came in to a shambolic team fairly early on, out of nowhere, as a medical joker, I thought he was quite good at Racing. So we've discounted Marchand, but I'm happy to consider Barlow, I think, or Bobigny.
I love Gaëtan Barlow. I think Bosch was probably, from an individual performance standpoint, for me,
load of turnovers.
Stands out more. Yeah.
Awesome. So 1 Van, 1 Bayonne. This is a good start. Tight head. Who do you think I'm going for?
I think you're going for friend of the pod, Kieran Brooks.
I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going for Collier?
No, I've got Brooks here. It's between Brooks and Collier. Yeah. And I think
Sinclair was close as well, but he just
the
period of injury meant that
Sinclair was brilliant. And I don't think it is just the English. I think the 3 outstanding tight heads through the course of the top 14 season were those 3.
Yeah.
I think I don't think that's hugely up for debate. The reason I had Brooks at the top was probably just because of individual impact on his team season. We spoke so much about how that Perpignan scrum, without it, they were going down, whether in the access match or before that.
I think they would have gone down before that without the scrum. So many of those games, they earned bonus points by getting back into the game in the second half of the game, or stuff like that. Like,
so Kieran Brooks for me.
yeah. Also, you got like they had that game they won at Poe early on in the season. They won like 11-10, didn't they, or something against Poe at the Amy Giroux. Like that was basically all they scored. They won so many games just on penalties. I think you're right. Like just individual impact, and also being on the podcast this season. I think that's worked for Sam Davis, got him in the team. Second row, so again the top 14 official one has David Ribbons as a loose head lock, despite the fact that he started all of his games he had 14 starts out of 20 in the 5 jersey. So yeah, I've got him in the tight head selection. So who do you think my locks were? I reckon you can guess these.
Did you go for Guillard?
No.
Ribbons?
I went for Ribbons.
I'm not sure. I went for Ribbons and someone who often wears 5 as well, that does play at 4, in Cyril Cazo.
Okay. I went for Arthur Aturia.
Okay. I can see that.
Ribbons has to be tight headlock, I think. He has to be. He was a standout lock all season, captain of Toulon, and their pack was so good, which means he is our first double player. I just think Cyril Cazo did have a very good season. I just think he's a bit meh. Aturia is just amazing at line out time. I just think he's everything a French loose head lock should be.
Yeah, I'm happy to have Aturia. I would disagree that Cazo's a bit meh. I think he is one of the best second rows in the league. I think he's an unbelievable player.
He can be our bench second row because he can cover both. He can come loose and loose.
Let's go with that. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, the other, I guess, Petty was pretty good. Brennan was pretty good. Actually, Guillard. I mean, should it be Guillard?
I think the reason I didn't have Guillard is just not in any way that he didn't have a great season for Lyon, but I think his big performances have been in a French jersey. And I just felt like a Cazo, or kind of now you put it in front of Ituria in the top 14 season, maybe had a little bit more.
Yeah.
But
I kind of considered Alan Ouisi, Helen Garhu. There were loads of options. Thomas Say, again, another guest, Alex Moon, had a pretty solid season. But I think Ituria was probably grabbed a few more headlines in terms of the buy on second rows.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Blindside, I found tough.
Yeah, I think there's some decent candidates here. I went with somebody who wears 7 but does play like a blindside. And I think given Willis is our kind of open side, whatever number's on his back.
Yeah,
I think we're agreed on.
He did start most of his games at 7. Willis did.
Yeah.
So,
but he's an open side flanker, right?
Yeah.
He's not the profile of this guy, for instance, who's another Bayonne player. And actually, Bayonne's back row options were fabulous this year. Gone Baptiste Chuzanu.
Interesting. I don't know where he sits on the games stuff, if I'm honest. Let me find that.
I can tell you.
I went for Ibrahim Diallo at Racing.
Interesting. Okay.
I thought he was really good, like all season in the kind of, in a pretty crap team, or at times, and a team. I mean, he got 1 yellow and 1 red, which is, par for the course at Racing, really. But I think
she's a new 14 starts.
So he passes the test.
8 off the bench, played a couple of games at lock as well.
Yeah.
Fits for me that kind of open side. I really like Diallo, but I do think, I hadn't really considered Diallo, probably more on Racing's form as much as anything.
A player who I don't think is going to pass the games test, but I thought had a really good season when he did play, Paul Boudon. 12 starts, 17 games, 5 tries.
Maybe we come back to it.
So the one I saw in someone's team this season was Rodrigo Bruni, which I think is fair. A player, I don't know if this is the most, but a player that played 1,800 minutes, which sounds like quite a lot. 23 games, 23 starts, 24 games. Mathieu Babio.
Yeah.
Who I guess is always going to be there or thereabouts.
He was close. I felt, because he on the official selector, Babio's in there, Bruni's in there. Should we come back to it?
Yeah, Makalou.
Question, Makalou, always, but always. I think some of his ropey stuff this year, maybe given the quality of. Although he played some, the last back row position, number 8, he was excellent at 8, and I think genuinely there are so many potential options that you'd be happy with at 8.
Yeah. Who do you think I've gone for?
I think you would have gone for maybe like a Facundo Issa.
No, but he is on my list.
Who did you end up with?
I've ended up with Abraham Papali'i.
Oh, well, we're in unison. We're agreed.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, he was amazing for Cast.
Yeah.
Just another level. I think honourable mentions there. We mentioned it, but I think also I think Issa was fantastic. Yeah. Mackley had some pretty good games.
Aldrit was all right. We played.
Aldrit was this. God, what's his name? Had an amazing season. Callum Mathoni at Van.
Yeah,
was awesome. Sowakula.
Yeah, he played like 5 games though, didn't he?
Habel Kerfner was awesome when he played at 8.
Habel Kerfner was the closest to. So he did play 6, but only 5 starts at 6. So we could squeeze him in at 6 if we wanted to. But it was between Habel Kerfner and Papali'i for me.
Yeah, but I think that's unanimous, right? Two from 2 on. So just a little recap. Do we need to pick that 6 now?
Tisserand, that's another 6 option.
No, let's come back to it.
Okay.
Nucci was excellent, wasn't he?
I don't know how many games he played, but we could go Nucci.
He was injured for quite a bit.
Yeah, I feel like there's probably a standout
there's someone we're
player.
Missing.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's park it.
Nucci's not a bad shout. 16 starts, 22 games, of which mixed bag of 6 and 7.
We didn't in that eights list mention Billy Vunipola.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
Very,
Who
very
was
good.
If I was doing a short list, it would have been, well, they give you 5, don't they? But Habel Kerfner, Papali'i, Issa, Vunipola for me, I think, and then probably Aldrit. But it's tricky, that one. Geelong's pretty good as well.
Onto the backs.
Scrum half, tough again.
Very, very.
Although we were unanimous last year on the same player,
Who did we have last year?
Baptiste Kuyu, because he scored so many tries.
Oh, of course.
Who do you think I've gone for this year?
Serran.
I have gone for Serran.
Yeah, so have I.
Despite,
I think he had
the disciplinary record.
I think he just at points he was essentially. I mean, he was playing extraordinary rugby in a team that was doing brilliantly. He also basically became like a sort of viral rugby player. It felt at some points. It was, look what Baptiste Serran has done again for Toulon. He was, in a league of amazing 9s. I'm not saying he's not the best, but I just thought he was close to perfection at points and for big parts of the season.
He was absolutely magical. Like it's like doing things that the guy that will almost certainly be in the majority of top 14 teams this season, Maxime Lucu, was brilliant, but you don't see him do some of the stuff that Serran was doing this season. It was just freakish, wasn't it? Some of the stuff. And also, I think that's recency bias to go for Lucu, because Serran tailed off slightly, but earlier, like the first half of the season, he was unbelievable.
Yeah,
genuinely unbelievable in terms of I couldn't believe some of the stuff he was doing.
Big games as well, where he played the full 80 and they kept Ben White, a quality of Ben White's player on the bench, I think speaks extraordinary volumes. So yeah, Serran, very happy with. So that's unanimous 8, 9, 10.
Are we going to be unanimous?
Have you gone for the main man MBE at 10?
I have, yeah.
Have you? Okay, I'm
highest point scorer.
I'm not totally adverse to it, but I don't see how Mathieu Jalibert does not come in at 10. I just don't see how he doesn't. You talk about doing ridiculous things. You talk about like talismanness. We're talking about him, the primary reason we felt Bordeaux might be able to overcome Toulouse in the final, or one of the primary reasons, was him and him alone. I just think if he is, as I think we've said, played probably the best rugby of his career in the last 3 months, and beyond that, I just don't, as much as I love Joe Simmons, and he was amazing for Poe, and he's so important for Poe.
The drop goal.
The
Elsa Minsko drop goal alone.
That may be moments in front of no fans behind the post. I forgot about that. I think it's got to be Jalibert, mate. Deep down.
No, I know, but damn, that was going to be my only Poe player. Fair enough. 17 starts. That's enough, isn't it?
So.
Yeah. Sagons, as I said, played 28 games. Played 28 games. Lafarge played a lot of minutes. Second highest point scorer, 25 games. So he played in all bar 1 for Van. But I actually didn't think... I think Lafarge goal kicking fine, but not much else. Simmons, I think, is just so key for Poe. Although Desperez, when Simmons were injured, Desperez actually did play
really well, didn't he?
11 we've got sorted.
Who did you talk me through your 12s then? Because you said you had quite a few options here.
Saili, Tuolangi, Tuasova, Mofana, Rohan Jansi van Rensburg, Sanzel, Fabian Braubery.
Yeah, fair. Okay. So I think honourable mention to Jeremy Sanzel, who became probably a bit of an unexpected key cog in that side.
Yeah.
I actually, out of those, and now you give me that list, particularly Saidi, actually, I don't know if I'm right, but it's a bit recency biased. But I thought Tuasova, when they actually played him at 12, went back into full like freak show mode at Racing. But he started a load of games, but I don't know if positional when he started needs to be taken into account.
Should we just go Manu? Just go parochial, go Manu. I mean, Manu was amazing. And I think it completely surprised me that he played as well as he did. Certainly first season in France as well. I do think I did go for Saili because he was so good in a team that was struggling and he made them competitive, like almost single-handedly. And again, just a bit of a surprise, like because Van were late to the market by virtue of kind of coming up. And he was kind of like, it was a name, it was like that's a name that was once good, which felt like a lot of their signings were.
It didn't look like a transformational signing.
No.
Or the signing of a player that would, be in this conversation. I'm really happy for Saili to...
Okay. 2 yellows, 1 red. I feel like we need someone that's been carded
bit of spine.
a lot. Yeah. 13, as you said, is tough. Do you want to list the 13s you've got, given that you said that was tricky?
It was really tricky, but in the end, it came down to 2 for me.
Yeah.
Which is maybe a bit unfair on...
Being Mangala and Fainganuku.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got Barassi, Deporter, Fiku, Gaiaton with the
Gaiaton, yeah.
Gaiaton only scored a lot of tries in not many games. I think it was 11 tries in like 16 games or something.
I had on my sort of long list as well Jack Goodhue, more for his second half of the season. But I think Mangala and Fainganuku for the duration were the outstanding 13s. And I came out on, I know he maybe just held off a tiny bit, but I came out on Mangala.
So Mangala only scored 1 try in 2025. So he scored 11 tries in the season. And one of them was after the halfway mark, which is amazing. But I thought Fainganuku was amazing, absolutely amazing. But for the first half of the season, we were unanimous every week that Mangala is the best player in the top 14 right now. And on that basis, I think we have to go Mangala.
Yeah, he was remarkable. You talk about kind of Serran looked like he was playing a different game. And I think Mangala, and as we said a couple of weeks ago, maybe before Bayonne really clicked as a side as well. Like they clicked all year. They were unbeaten at home, but they scraped through some games. And I think he was out on his own.
Yeah,
when they were looking like a kind of mid-table team, and they finished up as with a home barrage.
Fine, Unique's on the bench.
Yeah,
can cover wing, centre, 8.
Very nice.
Right wing, I found tough.
This was tough.
I didn't think there were that many standout options, which is amazing in the wingers to say.
So the 2 it came down to for me were Gail Drayan.
Yeah,
and the person I actually ended up on was Ange Capuozzo.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Damian Penaud.
No.
Capuozzo, 18 games, 13 starts, 9 tries. When he played, he was sensational. I went Drayan because he, for a long part of the season, he was the highest try scorer. And arguably, I think there was one game where he should have had a hat trick within like 20 minutes, and it was inexplicably chalked off.
I'm very happy to go. Well, I think Capuozzo was. Bearing in mind, he was on the bench for Toulouse last year. He wasn't in their best 15. Suddenly became indispensable. Obviously, unlucky with injuries towards quite a serious injury right towards the end of the season. Thought he did some extraordinary things. I'm very happy for Gail Drayan, consistently excellent throughout the season.
Richard, there will be people shouting on their commute, "Why Nicolo?" Well, I can tell you, as a left wing, He started 13 games out of 14, 9 tries on the left wing. But I don't think that's enough games, and he's up against.
Can we squeak him onto our bench, a 5-3 bench?
We've already got 5-3 bench. We've got to have Fine Ganuku on the bench.
Fine Ganuku,
Simmons, and
okay,
a 9.
Can we do a 4-4 bench?
4-4. Fine Ganuku is
Wine
a
and
hybrid.
What? Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
No, because we've got so many back row. We've got so many 8 options.
Cool. So Gael Drayan, I think, is in, and that brings us to fullback.
Yes. I think there is a standout candidate here.
Is it Thomas Ramos?
No, although it probably should be.
That's who I had. I don't know if he passes our appearances.
He does, I think. He has 14 starts from 14 games, but obviously Toulouse played 28 games, so he started exactly half of Toulouse's games. I don't actually have his game stats here. I've gone for one of the other, and he was actually our fullback last year, Richard. I've gone for the other viral rugby player.
My microphone is just untouched. It's cut off. I think that's a timer.
Okay.
Viral rugby player, Rob. Who did we have last year? I feel like I'm getting mad.
He'll be a contender for one of the Rosbifs awards at the end of the season as well, being own try of the season.
Oh, Rapid Davitt.
Rapid Davitt?
Yeah, it doesn't feel right not to have him in.
Yeah.
Go on.
Davitt,
sorry, that's a proper brain fade.
Well, it's because Liam was shit, really. Ultimately, they were a bit crap. Did we decide on a 6?
I don't think we did.
I think Nucci, Tisserand, or Diallo. Who did you have?
Chizunu. Well, Chizunu largely played with 7 on his back, so let's rule him out.
Yeah.
Based on that alone, for simplicity. Nucci's amazing.
I think Nucci made it last year as well.
Yeah, he's amazing.
We like Nucci. Montpellier are actually all right. I think they do. And he's not a criminal, which is a rare thing in Montpellier. So well done him for...
Yet.
Yeah, yet. Right. Well, that makes our team 1 to 15. Mako Vunipola at loose head. Facundo Bosch from Bayonne at hooker. The Catalan cow, Kieran Brooks from Perpignan at tight head. Artur Aturia alongside David Ribbons in the second row from Bayonne and Toulon, respectively. Blindside flanker, Lenny Nucci from Montpellier. Standout player of the season, Jack Willis at open side flanker. Cass, Abraham Papali'i at 8. Baptiste Serran from Toulon at 9, alongside Mathieu Jalibert from Bordeaux, linking up with his Bordeaux teammate Louis Bielbiaré at left wing. Inside centre, Francis Saili from Vannes. Outside centre, Sorelli Mangala from Bayonne. Gael Drayan on the right wing of Toulon, and Rapid Davitt Niniashvili at fullback, which makes our bench. Who is your hooker? Let's go Barlow on the bench with Priso and Collier. Reserve Cyril Cazo as a reserve second rower. Gio Habel-Kufner, who's a reserve? We haven't got reserve 9. Luku, Joe Simmons MBE, and Lester Fine Ganuku. That's a damn good
Thomas
team.
Ramos can coach.
Thomas Ramos can yob on the sideline. I think that's a good balance of like the teams as well. I think we've got that right. Yeah.
Feels okay.
No,
Rob,
there is a player. Joe Simmons on the bench.
I'm going to need to leave you.
Okay.
To do the final farewells, but it's been an enjoyable morning.
Thank you, Archangel Richard, for your help in this. People, I'll put this up on YouTube, and people have got no idea. Actually, no, they can see it on YouTube. They can see you glowing like an archangel. But thank you, Richard. I enjoyed that, and I cannot wait for people to come at me, all one commenter or whoever. But yeah, please comment and please share it wherever you can. Let's get a debate going on this. But we are right. I'd like to make that clear. Enjoy your day of hard yakka, Richard. I'll let you go.
Thanks, mate. Au revoir, folks.
So it's just me, and I will wrap up with some very, very quick Petit-Fours in terms of transfers. I guess the big one on the Petit-Fours this week is that Nice have become, or Stade Niçoise have become Nice Rugby. There is an 8-minute YouTube video, which I haven't yet watched, but you can see all about that. But the big transfers, well, a couple of coaching ones. Nice themselves have signed Jamie Cudmore, former Clermont player, Canadian international. Cudmore as a forwards coach. Jeremy Davidson has joined Vannes as a forwards coach, former Cast headman, former Brive headman, I think. Van have also signed Michaela Lanier, who's quite often starts for Georgia at 9, plays a lot at 9 for Georgia, but from Aurillac didn't play that much. The two teams that announced a raft of signings this week, one of them was UBB, so Mamadou Diaby is gone, but they have signed, as we knew, quite a lot of these players. Gaetan Barlow from Cass, Jean Musquez from Bayonne, Martin Pagerello from Lyon, Italian international, Boris Parlou from Racing. Big, just building that squad more and more again. Montpellier seemed to sign a lot of British players. Not only did they confirm that our man Alex Masabaka was returning to Montpellier, but also Wales and Lions secondary Adam Beard. That's quite a good signing for their style of play with their good line out, good driving game. Lennox Anyanwu from Young Harlequins player. We mentioned that months ago as a rumour. And Ali Price, Scotland and Lions. Yes, last tour. Scotland and Lions scrum half Ali Price. So a good British presence down at Montpellier when you add in Billy Vunipola already there, Stuart Hogg already there. There's probably a few others that I've forgotten immediately. A lot of stuff going on with Uzair Kassim from Bayonne. Nice have announced the signing, or Nissa Rugby have announced the signing, but he's trying to get out of it and trying to get a bigger pay packet at Bayonne, or Bayonne have offered him more, or he's moving to Biarritz, who have offered him a load of cash. Don't know what's going on there. I think the Nice guy, like the guy doing all the recruiting and the president, is Jean-Baptiste Aldiger, who was at Biarritz and likes to cause a bit of a stir. Tane Takalua, best calves in world rugby, is signed for Pro D2 New Boys Carcassonne. And talking of new boys, the top 14 new boys, Montauban, have been active. They've signed Nafi Marfu, number 8 from Biarritz. They've extended Luso Ciordoni, Argentine tight head, who's massive and was pretty good towards the end of the season. He was a medical joker initially. He's been extended. And the big signing is former All Black Via Fafita from Scarlets, who is a hell of a player. He could tear up the top 14 next season. I think he could be a brilliant, brilliant signing. Plenty going on. It's all over social media. We will try on our social media to repost as much of it as possible, pass and comment where we can. So you should follow us on Instagram, X/Twitter, Blue Sky, TikTok. Maybe I'll do some roundups on TikTok of the transfers, but we are at Rosbifs Rugby on all of those. We are on YouTube as well. You may even be watching this on YouTube. We are at Rosbifs Rugby, so please subscribe there as well. Share any videos you see or any stories or any tweets or whatever that you like. Share it with a mate. Be generous. That's sharing and subscribing or downloading is kind of what really makes a difference for us. So please, if you are enjoying our content, please do that. You can email us on rosbifsrugby@gmail.com as well. So we'd love to hear from you. We are hopefully going to get the fixtures for Top 14 and Pro D2 announced this week. We think it's going to be this week, and we will start planning for next season. And if you want any tips on planning trips or where we should go, any recommendations, then we are the place to be for all things French rugby, your one-stop shop, including going out to watch the damn game in France, as Richard trails at the start of the podcast every week. But for now, that is everything. Get in touch with your views on the top 14 team of the season. Really want to hear what your 15s are. Let's chew the fat on this over social media, YouTube, X, Instagram. Get in touch. But for now, from me, Rob, Richard, thank you very much. He's an important man. He had to go to work. Au revoir.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.